Right now, as you're watching this video, something extraordinary is happening inside your skull. Billions of neurons are firing, electrical signals are cascading through neural networks, and somehow this creates the rich, vivid experience of you watching this screen. Understanding these words and feeling whatever emotions are stirring within you right now. But here's the mind-bending question that has stumped scientists, philosophers, and researchers for centuries. How does dead matter, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, suddenly wake up and become conscious? How do unconscious atoms arrange themselves into a conscious brain? This is called the hard problem of consciousness, and it might just be the most important unsolved mystery in all of science. Today, we're going to dive deep into why consciousness remains so elusive. We'll explore the cutting-edge theories trying to crack this code, and discover why some scientists believe we may never solve it. For the next few minutes, we're going on a journey into the deepest mystery of existence itself. So grab your favorite drink, get comfortable, and prepare to have your mind blown by the hard problem that's redefining our understanding of reality. Let's start with a simple question that's anything but simple. What is consciousness? Right now, you're not just processing visual information from this screen. You're having a subjective, first-person experience of watching this video. There's something it's like to be you right now. Philosophers call this qualia, the felt quality of experiences. Think about the redness of a red apple, not the wavelength of light. That's about 700 nanometers. But the actual experience of redness, the way it looks to you, that subjective, inner quality of experience. That's consciousness, and it's unlike anything else in the known universe. In the 1990s, philosopher David Chalmers revolutionized consciousness research by distinguishing between the easy problems and the hard problem of consciousness. The easy problems, and yes, he called them easy, even though they're incredibly complex, include how the brain processes information, how we focus attention, how we integrate sensory data, how we control behavior, how we report mental states. These are easy because we can imagine how computational and neural mechanisms might solve them. We're making tremendous progress on these fronts. But the hard problem, that's different. The hard problem asks, why is there subjective experience at all? Why don't we just process information like sophisticated zombies? Why is there an inner movie theater where the show of consciousness plays out? Neuroscientist Joseph Levine identified what he called the explanatory gap, the seemingly unbridgeable chasm between physical processes in the brain and subjective conscious experience. We can map every neuron, trace every electrical signal, measure every chemical reaction in the brain. But nowhere in that physical description do we find an explanation for why there's something it's like to have that brain activity. It's like trying to explain the wetness of water by describing H2O molecules. The molecules themselves aren't wet. Wetness emerges from their interaction. But consciousness seems different. Even if we understand all the neural interactions, the leap to subjective experience remains mysterious. Here's something crucial to understand. Consciousness is not the same as intelligence or information processing. We're building increasingly sophisticated AI systems that can process information, solve problems, and even engage in conversations. But are they conscious? Do they have inner experiences? Or are they just very sophisticated input-output machines? This distinction is vital because it highlights that consciousness isn't just about what the brain does. It's about what it feels like from the inside. Despite the hard problem, neuroscientists have made remarkable progress in understanding the neural correlates of consciousness, the brain activity associated with conscious experience. Studies using techniques like fMRI, EEG, and direct neural recording have identified several key brain regions and networks crucial for consciousness. The thalamus acts like a central relay station, integrating information from across the brain. Damage to specific thalamic regions can eliminate consciousness entirely, leading to persistent vegetative states. The prefrontal cortex, our brain's CEO, seems crucial for self-awareness and metacognition, thinking about thinking. The default mode network, active when we're not focused on the external world, appears central to our sense of self and introspective consciousness. One of the most influential theories comes from neuroscientist Stanislaus Dehaene and his global workspace theory. Imagine your brain as a vast theater. Most processing happens behind the scenes. Unconscious modules handling vision, hearing, memory, and motor control. But consciousness emerges when information makes it onto the global stage, where it becomes available to multiple brain systems simultaneously. This explains why consciousness seems unified despite being constructed from separate processes. When you see a red apple, visual processing identifies the shape, color processing identifies the redness, and memory systems identify it as an apple. Global workspace theory suggests these separate processes converge on a central stage, creating the unified conscious experience of red apple. Neuroscientist Giulio Tononi proposed a more radical approach: integrated information theory, or IIT. IIT suggests that consciousness corresponds to integrated information, that is, information that's unified and irreducible to separate parts. The more integrated information a system generates, the more conscious it is. This theory makes surprising predictions. According to IIT, some simple networks might be more conscious than human brains, and certain AI systems could be conscious even if they don't seem intelligent in human terms. IIT even suggests that consciousness might be fundamental to the universe, that any system integrating information has some degree of consciousness, even if vanishingly small. Here's a fascinating puzzle. How does your brain bind separate features into unified objects? When you look at a red moving ball, different brain regions process its color, motion, and shape. Yet you experience a single, unified object. This binding problem highlights how mysterious even basic conscious experience remains. Some researchers propose that neural synchrony, neurons firing in sync across different brain regions, might be the mechanism that binds features together. Others suggest that attention acts like a spotlight, temporarily linking relevant features. Some of our most important insights about consciousness come from studying altered states. Research with psychedelics like psilocybin and LSD reveals that consciousness isn't fixed. These substances can dissolve the sense of self, merge senses together in synesthesia, and create experiences that challenge our normal understanding of conscious boundaries. Studies show that psychedelics reduce activity in the default mode network, the brain network associated with self-awareness. This suggests that our normal conscious self might actually be a construction that can be deconstructed. Similarly, studies of meditation, anesthesia, and sleep provide windows into different states of consciousness, each revealing how malleable and constructed our normal waking consciousness really is. Philosopher David Chalmers proposed one of the most mind-bending thought experiments in consciousness studies: the philosophical zombie. Imagine a being physically identical to you. Every atom in exactly the same place, every neural firing pattern identical. But this being has no inner experience whatsoever. It processes information, responds to stimuli, even claims to be conscious. But there's no one home, no subjective experience. If such zombies are conceivable, and Chalmers argues they are, then consciousness must be something over and above physical processes. This zombie argument suggests that physicalism, the idea that everything is purely physical, might be false. Critics argue that zombies are inconceivable because consciousness necessarily emerges from the right kind of physical organization. But the debate continues to rage in philosophy of mind. One of the most radical solutions to the hard problem is panpsychism, the idea that consciousness is a fundamental feature of reality, like mass or charge. Philosophers like Philip Goff and scientists like Christoph Koch argue that rather than consciousness emerging from complex arrangements of unconscious matter, perhaps consciousness is present at the most basic level of reality. In this view, electrons, protons, and photons might have primitive conscious experiences. When these particles organize into complex systems like brains, their individual conscious experiences combine into the rich consciousness we experience. This might sound crazy, but panpsychism solves the hard problem by eliminating it. If consciousness is fundamental, we don't need to explain how it emerges from unconscious matter. It was there all along. Some philosophers take the opposite approach, arguing that consciousness as we think of it doesn't actually exist. Illusionists like Keith Frankish and Dennett argue that consciousness is like a magic trick. It seems real and mysterious, but that's because we're looking at it wrong. According to illusionism, when we introspect and seem to find mysterious qualia, the redness of red, the painfulness of pain, we're actually just accessing information about our own mental states. The seeming mystery of consciousness is an illusion created by the way our brains represent information to themselves. This view suggests that once we fully understand the neural mechanisms of self-representation and introspection, the hard problem will dissolve rather than be solved. Some philosophers accept that consciousness is real but argue it represents a new kind of property in nature. Property dualists like David Chalmers argue that while the world is fundamentally physical, conscious properties are irreducible to physical properties. Just as electromagnetic properties weren't reducible to mechanical properties in physics, conscious properties might represent a genuinely new level of description. This doesn't require a separate mental substance, as in Cartesian dualism, but it does suggest that consciousness represents irreducible properties of certain physical systems. Philosopher Frank Jackson proposed another influential thought experiment: Mary the color scientist. Mary is a brilliant scientist who knows everything physical about color, wavelengths, neural processing, behavioral responses. But she's lived her entire life in a black and white room and has never experienced color herself. When Mary finally leaves her room and sees a red tomato for the first time, does she learn something new? Jackson argues yes. She learns what it's like to see red. This suggests there are truths about consciousness that can't be captured by physical descriptions. This knowledge argument supports the idea that consciousness involves something beyond physical facts, that subjective experience contains irreducible qualitative properties. One of the most controversial theories comes from physicist Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff. Their orchestrated objective reduction, or theory suggests that consciousness arises from quantum processes in microtubules, tiny structures inside neurons. According to OR, consciousness emerges when quantum superpositions in microtubules collapse in orchestrated ways. This quantum process is supposed to explain the unity and non-computational aspects of consciousness. Most neuroscientists are skeptical, because brains seem too warm and noisy for delicate quantum effects. But recent research has found quantum processes in biological systems like photosynthesis and bird navigation, keeping this theory alive. Neuroscientist Michael Graziano proposes that consciousness is the brain's schematic model of its own attention processes. Just as the brain creates simplified models of the body schema, and space around us, spatial schema, Graziano argues it creates an attention schema, a simplified model of attention itself. When the brain accesses this attention schema, it essentially finds a model that says, there's something it's like to attend to things. This creates the illusion of consciousness, the sense that there's inner experience. This theory suggests consciousness is a useful fiction, a simplified model the brain uses to monitor and control its own attention processes. Increasingly influential theories suggest consciousness emerges from predictive processing, the brain's constant effort to predict incoming sensory information. Researchers like Andy Clark and Jacob Hoey argue that consciousness might be the brain's best guess about the causes of its sensory inputs. We don't passively receive information. We actively construct our experienced world based on predictions. This explains many features of consciousness. Why perception feels immediate. Predictions are pre-computed. Why consciousness seems unified. It's a single predictive model. And why altered states can be so dramatic. They reflect changes in predictive models. Some theories locate consciousness in higher-order mental processes. Thoughts about thoughts. Higher-order theorists like David Rosenthal argue that a mental state becomes conscious when it's the target of a higher-order thought. You're conscious of seeing red when you have a thought about your visual state. This theory explains why consciousness seems to involve self-awareness and why creatures without sophisticated metacognitive abilities might lack consciousness. Neuroscientist Carl Friston has proposed that consciousness might emerge from the brain's efforts to minimize free energy, essentially, to minimize surprise. According to this theory, conscious systems are those that maintain their organization by constantly predicting and minimizing unexpected inputs. Consciousness might be what it feels like from the inside to be a system minimizing free energy. This connects consciousness to fundamental principles of physics and biology, suggesting it might emerge naturally from the organization principles that keep complex systems alive. As AI systems become more sophisticated, the question of machine consciousness becomes increasingly pressing. If consciousness depends on information integration, then sufficiently complex AI systems might be conscious. If it requires biological processes, then silicon-based consciousness might be impossible. This isn't just philosophical speculation. If AI systems become conscious, they might deserve moral consideration. We might need to think about AI rights, AI suffering, and our responsibilities toward conscious machines. Some researchers are already working on consciousness meters, ways to detect and measure consciousness in both biological and artificial systems. Understanding consciousness has profound medical implications. Better theories of consciousness could help us detect consciousness in unresponsive patients, understand and treat disorders of consciousness, develop better anesthetics and pain management, help patients with conditions like locked-in syndrome. Research on consciousness is already improving care for patients in vegetative states, helping identify cases of covert consciousness where patients are aware but unable to respond. If consciousness is more widespread than we thought, perhaps present in animals, plants, or even AI systems, our ethical frameworks might need radical revision. Questions we might face. Which animals are conscious and deserve moral consideration? Could plants or ecosystems have forms of consciousness? When AI systems become conscious, what rights should they have? How do we balance human interests with the interests of other conscious beings? Where is consciousness research heading? Emerging technologies offer new windows into consciousness. Advanced brain imaging with higher resolution, brain-computer interfaces that might reveal the structure of conscious experience, virtual and augmented reality for studying altered states, AI systems that might achieve or simulate consciousness. Some researchers predict will solve the hard problem within decades. Others believe it will remain forever mysterious. But one thing is certain: consciousness research is accelerating, and the implications will be profound. So, where does this leave us? After exploring consciousness, are we any closer to solving the hard problem? In some ways, yes. We've mapped the neural correlates of consciousness, developed sophisticated theories, and gained insights into how conscious experience is constructed. We're no longer completely in the dark about consciousness. But in other ways, the hard problem remains as challenging as ever. We still don't know why there's something it's like to be conscious. We don't know whether consciousness is fundamental or emergent, widespread or rare, solvable or permanently mysterious. And perhaps that's okay. The hard problem of consciousness might be the price we pay for being conscious beings trying to understand ourselves. It's the universe looking at itself through conscious eyes and marveling at its own existence. What we do know is that consciousness, your consciousness, right now, as you watch this video, is the most remarkable thing we know of in the universe. You are a collection of atoms that has somehow become aware of itself. That's not just scientifically fascinating. It's profound, beautiful, and deeply mysterious. The hard problem reminds us that despite all our scientific advances, reality still holds secrets. And maybe that's what makes the journey of discovery so worthwhile. Thanks for joining me on this exploration of consciousness. If this video made you think differently about your own mind, hit that like button. Subscribe for more deep dives into science's greatest mysteries. And let me know in the comment, do you think we'll ever solve the hard problem of consciousness? Until next time, keep questioning, keep wondering, and remember, the fact that you can wonder at all is the greatest mystery of all.